Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Oh,
This time we're tackling something um, pretty fascinating, I think. It's all about how understanding, like different worldviews, can actually help us have more productive conversations and maybe even lead to, some real change in the world. So imagine being able to figure out what someone's really doing, even when their actions seem, totally illogical,
mhm.
just by understanding their, deepest desires for the world.
That's exactly it. And our source material, it starts off by asking this really simple question, but it's deceptively simple, I think. What is your most desired vision for the world at large and your place in it?
Oh, wow. Yeah. That does sound pretty simple on the surface,
Uh,
but I'm already getting the feeling there's a lot more to unpack there.
oh yeah, for sure. It's powerful because it cuts through all that surface level stuff,
Yeah.
all the arguments and disagreements we usually get so caught up in. And instead of getting bogged down in, are you right or wrong, it goes straight to the heart of someone's motivation. Like, what outcome are you actually aiming for?
Right, right. So it's less about arguing about the best way to get somewhere and more about making sure, we're even trying to get to the same place to begin with.
Exactly. Like, think about GPS, right? It's totally useless if you put in the wrong address.
Yeah, totally.
And the source actually gives a really great example of how this plays out, in real life. Think about someone with a tribal worldview. Their absolute top priority is going to be the safety and success of their own group above pretty much everything else.
Oh, I see. So if you're coming at them with, some one big happy tribe kind of ideal, you're probably not going to get very far.
Yeah, you're going to hit a wall. It's almost like speaking different languages. Because their desired outcome is just totally different. So
Yeah.
to even have a chance of a real conversation, a meaningful conversation, you got to first understand the language of their worldview.
Okay, yeah. I'm starting to see how this all fits together. But the source material, it goes even deeper than that, right? It talks about this mythic layer, which honestly sounds kind of intense.
Oh, it is. It's so fascinating. The mythic layer, it's like this field of unconscious beliefs,
Okay.
almost like these archetypes that shape how we see reality. And it's not just about our conscious thoughts or opinions. There's this whole other level at play.
Okay, so it's like there are these hidden stories kind of running in the background,
Mm-hmm.
and they're influencing our thoughts and actions, even if we're not even aware of them.
Exactly. Like, think about those common sayings we hear all the time. Stuff like, life is a struggle or nature is out to get us. They might seem like simple expressions, but they actually carry a lot of weight.
Yeah, those are pretty heavy. But even if we don't consciously buy into those ideas, they could still be impacting us on some deeper level.
Absolutely. These myths, whether we get them from our families or our culture, or even just from the media we consume, they influence our deepest beliefs about everything, life, death, purpose, good and evil. And those beliefs then go on to shape the world we experience.
Wow. So it's almost like we're unconsciously attracting experiences that just confirm whatever those pre-existing mythic beliefs are.
Right.
So even if I, consciously reject this idea that the world is a dangerous place, if that myth is still kind of lurking somewhere in my subconscious, it might still be affecting how I interact with, well, everything.
You got it.
Yeah.
It can affect your choices, your relationships, even the opportunities you see or don't see. It's like this invisible filter shaping your reality.
This is pretty mind-blowing. So if we're all walking around with these hidden mythologies, how do we even begin to bridge the gap between, different worldviews?
Well, that's where understanding both the worldview and the underlying myths becomes so important. It's like having a map and a compass, The worldview shows you the destination, and the myths reveal the terrain you'll be navigating to get there.
I like that, yeah. Okay, so let's say I'm talking to someone, and their views just completely baffle me. I can't wrap my head around it. What's my first step? How do we even begin to understand, their mythic landscape?
The source suggests this really interesting thought experiment. Next time you encounter someone whose actions or beliefs just seem totally illogical, right? Try to first understand what kind of world they're actually trying to create. What's their desired outcome? Even if you don't agree at all with their methods for getting there.
Right, right. So instead of getting stuck in the, how or the why of what they're doing, I try to figure out the what. What worlds are they trying to build? Even if I think the blueprints are, totally messed up.
Exactly. Now, look, this might not always lead to you guys agreeing, but it can prevent a lot of wasted energy and frustration, for sure. It opens the door to genuine understanding and maybe even finding some, common ground.
Okay, I'm really starting to get this. But what about those situations where someone's worldview leads them to actions that just seem downright harmful or unethical? How do we navigate that?
Ooh, that's a great question. And it's one we're definitely going to unpack further. But first, let's take a closer look at how these myths operate in our own lives. Because, we all have them, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, it's easy to look at other people, right?
Yeah.
And their beliefs and actions and everything and think, wow, those myths are really controlling their lives. But the truth is, we all have our own sets of myths, even if we don't realize it.
You're exactly right. We like to think of ourselves as, these rational beings who make decisions based on logic and evidence. But the reality is these myths, they operate on a much deeper level, way below our conscious awareness. They're woven into our emotional reactions, our gut instincts, the assumptions we make about the world without even thinking about it.
Right, yeah. So it's not as simple as just sitting down and saying, okay, what are my myths? There's got to be a different way to kind of uncover them.
The source suggests exploring some different avenues, things like movement, ritual, ceremony, even art and music. These can help us tap into those deeper levels of awareness where the myths might actually reveal themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not just about intellectual analysis. It's about engaging different parts of ourselves. Our bodies, our senses, our emotions.
Exactly. These myths, they're not just intellectual concepts up here. They're embedded in the very fabric of our being. Think about it. How often do you find yourself reacting to a situation in a way that honestly kind of surprises even you? That's often a sign that there's a myth at play.
Oh, totally. Like when I get super defensive in a work meeting,
Yeah.
even though logically I know I don't need to be.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe there's a myth of I need to prove myself, or, I'm not good enough, kind of operating beneath the surface, and that's what's driving that reaction.
So by paying attention to those moments, right, to our gut reactions and our emotional patterns, we can start to identify those hidden myths.
Right. And once we start to identify them, we can start to question them. Where did they come from? Are they actually serving us? Do they align with the kind of world we want to create? Both for ourselves and for others,
Yeah, that's a pretty powerful realization. Because if these myths are actually shaping our reality, then changing those myths can change our reality. It's we have way more agency than we realize.
It is empowering, but it's important to remember that this is an ongoing process, We're constantly bombarded with new myths and narratives through the media, through social interactions, even just our own internal dialogues. It's not just a one-time fix.
So it's about cultivating this, sense of awareness, this constant questioning of the stories we're telling ourselves and the stories we're being told.
Yeah, and that's actually where understanding other people's worldviews can be super helpful. It challenges our own assumptions, exposes us to different ways of seeing things. It helps us see our own myths more clearly.
Right. So it's not just about avoiding conflict. It's about personal growth and expanding our understanding of, everything.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the humanity in those who hold different beliefs, even if we totally disagree with them.
Okay. Yeah. That's huge. So let's bring this back to those practical applications. Imagine I'm talking to someone and their actions just seem completely nonsensical to me. Maybe they're protesting something I believe in or supporting a cause I find totally reprehensible.
It's so easy to get caught up in that initial emotional reaction, right? To judge, to dismiss, to want to argue.
Oh, absolutely. But instead of going down that road, the source suggests, a different approach.
They encourage us to ask a deeper question. What is the desired outcome here? What kind of world is this person trying to create? Even if their methods seem, wrong or misguided.
Okay, so instead of getting bogged down in the details of what they're doing, I step back and try to see the bigger picture, their vision for the world.
You got it. Now, this doesn't mean you have to agree with their methods or even their ultimate goal, right? But it allows you to see them as a rational actor, someone who's pursuing a desired outcome, even if you don't share that desire.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective. It moves us away from this right versus wrong kind of thinking.
Yeah.
And it opens up space for actual understanding and dialogue.
And that understanding, even if it doesn't lead to agreement, it can be incredibly valuable. It can help us avoid wasting energy on, these futile arguments, reduce conflict, and maybe even open up some new possibilities for collaboration.
This is really resonating with me. It's we can start to speak the same language, even if we don't agree on the grammar.
Exactly. And that's the key to creating real change in the world, not through force or coercion, but through understanding and connection.
This has been so insightful, but I have to ask, what about those situations where someone's worldview is truly harmful? What if their desired outcome violates my own deeply held values?
Ooh, that's a crucial question. And one that deserves, honestly, its own deep dive. How do we hold on to our own values while still seeking to understand those whose worldviews clash with our own? We'll explore that right after this.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? How do we deal with worldviews that lead to actions we just can't condone? Because like you said, understanding someone's perspective, it doesn't mean we have to agree with them.
You're absolutely right. Understanding is not the same as condoning. But even in those situations, understanding can be a really powerful tool, you know?
Okay, so how does that work? How can we understand a worldview that leads to actions that just completely contradict our own values?
It starts by remembering that. Even the most harmful actions, a lot of times, they stem from a desire to create a certain kind of world.
So even someone whose actions we find, totally reprehensible, they might genuinely believe they're acting in the best interest of something.
Exactly. They might have a worldview that's built on a set of myths that justify those actions in their mind, even if those myths are, like, completely at odds with our own.
So taking the time to understand their worldview and the myths that kind of underpin it can help us see how they arrived at those beliefs and those actions, even if we, vehemently disagree with them.
Exactly. And that understanding, it can actually be crucial in, like, effectively challenging those harmful ideologies.
Oh, interesting. Because if we understand where they're coming from, we can tailor our responses and our arguments accordingly.
Exactly. Instead of just saying, you're wrong, we can address their, like, underlying fears and motivations, the myths that are actually driving their actions.
It's like speaking to their worldview, not
Yeah.
just reacting to their behavior.
Right. We can acknowledge their desire for a certain outcome
Yeah.
while offering alternative paths to achieve it. Paths that, align with our own values.
So maybe instead of, like, simply condemning their actions outright, we could say something like, I understand you're trying to achieve X, but I believe this approach is actually counterproductive or even harmful.
That's a great example. You're acknowledging their worldview, their desired outcome, but you're offering a different way to get there, a way that doesn't violate your own ethical principles.
Yeah, it feels like a much more constructive approach,
Right.
even if it's, a difficult conversation to have.
It is. And even if it doesn't, like, change their mind overnight, it can plant a seed of doubt, a crack in the certainty of their beliefs. It exposes them to a different perspective, a different set of values.
And that's where real change begins, right? Not through judgment or condemnation, but through understanding and offering those alternative ways to achieve their desired outcome.
I think that's a key takeaway from this whole deep dive. This applies not just to, global conflicts and ideological clashes and all that, but also to our everyday interactions.
So the next time I encounter someone whose views just seem completely incompatible with my own, I can take a step back and try to understand their desired outcome, their worldview, even the myths that might be shaping their realities.
Exactly. And who knows, you might find some common ground, some, like, unexpected point of connection, even in the midst of disagreement.
Or at the very least, I'll avoid wasting energy on arguments that are never going to go anywhere.
And you might even learn something new about yourself in the process.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. It's really challenged me to think differently about how I approach conversations, especially with people who hold different views.
And that's the power of exploring these complex ideas, right? It expands our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
It's definitely given me a lot to think about. And for our listeners, here's a final thought to ponder. If our myths shape our reality, what myths are you unknowingly subscribing to? And how might those myths be influencing the world you are creating?
It's a powerful question to consider. And as you navigate the complexities of life and relationships, remember, seeking understanding is not about agreeing with everything you hear. It's about opening yourself up to new possibilities, new perspectives, and deeper connections with those around you.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep those deep dives going.